So glad you can join us. Here's what we have for you this Monday. Hundreds killed in violent protest crackdowns in Iran.
It's really unclear whether this sort of intervention will result in much.
How the regime reacted to America's military threat.
Perception versus reality are often two different things.
Canadians sense crime is on the increase, but what do the numbers actually reveal?
For this film, we really wanted to depict female characters the way that we know women.
Plus, a Canadian filmmaker tells us how she celebrated winning a truly Golden Globe.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
Iran cracks down on protesters after a third straight week of demonstrations, with human rights groups saying more than 500 have been killed. The regime continues to block internet and cell phone access and says it's ready for war, but open to talks after Donald Trump let it be known the U.S. is considering a response to Iran's brutal tactics. CTV senior political correspondent Mike LeCouture now on the situation in Iran and mounting concerns from members of the diaspora in Canada. Mike.
Well, Sandy, Iran's foreign minister says his country is not seeking war, but is fully prepared for it. Meanwhile, Iranian Canadians can do little but watch and worry.
It's a daily struggle. With communications to Iran cut off, Iraj Avahani can't reach his siblings in the northeastern part of the country. Even more concerning, his nieces and nephews have gone missing.
You cannot imagine what's going on, and if the phone, they said, okay, he's dead or he's in the jail. We hope he's in the jail.
The hope is that his brother or sister won't have to visit a makeshift morgue to search for the body. U.S.-based rights group Hrana says it has verified the death of more than 500 protesters.
The repression the regime is using to quell the dissent, to basically stop people from standing up for their basic rights. The repression we're seeing is increasing every year, and I think we're at a breaking point.
Monday, state TV aired footage showing massive crowds at pro-government rallies right across the country. Iranian authorities are accusing both Israel and the U.S. of having a direct role in the political unrest. Iran's foreign minister says his country is ready for talks with the U.S., but is also fully prepared for war. Trump's spokesperson says he's ready to talk while keeping military options on the table.
What you're hearing publicly from the Iranian regime is quite differently from the messages the administration is receiving privately, and I think the president has an interest in exploring those messages.
Meanwhile, back in Ottawa, members of the Iranian Canadian community can do little but send support.
And all they asking for freedom to choose to how to live, how to wear, what to eat, and what they do in their life.
Prime Minister Mark Carney has condemned the killing of protesters and urged Iran to allow for freedom of expression and peaceful assembly without fear of reprisal. Sandy?
Okay, Mike. Thank you, CTV's Mike LeCouture. Venezuela's opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado met with Pope Leo today and asked for his help in the release of political prisoners. The two met face-to-face in Leo's official office. The American pontiff has called for Venezuela to remain an independent country. Machado received the Nobel Prize for her efforts to advance democracy in the country and is expected to see Donald Trump on Thursday. Well, Greenland today rejected U.S. threats to take over the island, saying as a member of NATO, its defense would fall to the alliance. The Trump administration's ongoing warnings also prompted NATO chief Mark Rutte to say this.
We are really working together here. And my only worry is, how do we stay safe?
So no crisis whatsoever?
No, not at all. And I think we are really working in the right direction here.
Greenland is a semi-autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark. Trump says the U.S. needs to own the island for security and will acquire it whether they like it or not. Well, Canada's Prime Minister is heading to China this week on a mission to rebuild ties with one of the world's most populous nations. Trade and security discussions will be on the table with several sectors hoping for relief from China's punishing tariffs. CTV's Abigail Beeman sets up the trip for us. Okay, Abigail, tell us why this is such a key visit for the Prime Minister.
Sandy, Canadian government officials briefed reporters ahead of the trip and fielded many questions of the possibility of eliminating or at least reducing punishing tariffs. Expect progress on so-called irritants, say Canadian government sources, but not an elimination of tariffs. Canada has been hammered by tariffs on canola, pork and seafood, which China levied in response to Canadian duties on Chinese EVs. Government officials bill the trip as important in the long game as Canada tries to diversify trade.
Only less than 5% of our commodities trade goes to China. I think that's mostly about politics rather than substance. But the idea is to try and reestablish a good relationship with China. And
former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien was in Beijing last week. The Prime Minister's parliamentary secretary and Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs visited last month.
This has been a building block process. The trip in and of itself is an important stepping stone. I'm confident there will be outcomes and deliverables.
Cody Blois will be back for this trip. Carney also bringing 5 ministers and newly Liberal floor crosser Michael Ma.
There's so many challenges with China, and we have to be careful not to become strategically dependent. Pragmatic engagement is fine. Diplomatic amnesia would be a mistake.
Canadian officials concede there will always be areas Canada and China can work together on, and others we cannot. A coalition of human rights groups issued a letter to the Prime Minister ahead of the trip, urging Mark Carney to put human rights at the center of the relationship.
We haven't had a kind of a coordinated strategy in terms of dealing with China on the human rights, on the repression, and on the foreign interference. I think it's about time we express this.
The Prime Minister leaves for Beijing Tuesday. After China, he will visit Qatar for a bilateral visit focused on trade, followed by the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Sandy?
All right, Abigail, thank you. Let's bring in CTV's chief political correspondent, Vashi Kapelas. And Vashi, this is the first official visit by a prime minister to China in 10 years. So apart from, as we heard in Abigail's report, reestablishing good relationships with China, just how important is this trip?
It's important, Sandy, not just from a political standpoint, but definitely from an economic one. And I'd point your attention to, and our viewers' attention to, who is going on the trip with the Prime Minister, and 2 ministers in particular. One, Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson. If Canada is to become an energy superpower, China is a key export market to envision that even happening. So that is a key part of this trip. The other one is Heath MacDonald, the Minister of Agriculture. Abigail referenced those tariffs on canola and other agricultural products. Nobody is hoping or saying, I should say, that they're going to be removed immediately or especially during this trip, but they are incredibly damaging to that sector. The EV tariffs are a huge political issue as well, and I think Minister MacDonald's presence there highlights that challenge.
So, Vashi, the Prime Minister has to walk a fine line in building a trade relationship with China without insulting Donald Trump. Is there a way for Mr. Carney to do that?
Yeah, that's the multi-billion-dollar question, Sandy. One tiny example that I would say is emblematic of how difficult that challenge is. The Finance Minister, François-Philippe Champagne, is in Washington today to meet with counterparts in the G7 and within Washington around the issue of critical minerals. What is the key objective of that group? To counter China's dominance in that sector. That shows you how hard of a balancing act more largely, just in that one example, though, the Carney government has ahead of them.
Okay. Vashi, as always, thank you so much.
The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president.
The U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell lashing out at legal moves by the Department of Justice, threatening a criminal indictment over the cost of renovations at the Federal Reserve Building, as reflected in his testimony. Now, Powell says the move from the DOJ is politically motivated. The Fed has been repeatedly attacked by the U.S. president for not cutting interest rates sharply enough. When asked about the legal action, Trump yesterday said he doesn't know anything about it. Today, a group of former Federal Reserve chairmen signed a statement saying the attacks have no place in the U.S. And in a statement, Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem offered Powell his support, saying, and we quote, he's doing a very good job under difficult circumstances, guiding the Fed to take monetary policy decisions based on evidence, not politics. With us now, CTV's chief financial correspondent, Amanda Lang. Amanda, whether this unprecedented dispute is over interest rates or independence from the White House, will it shake trust in the financial system?
You know, the short answer to that is it won't until it does. So what we saw today were markets that were a little rattled but managed to rally back because we saw all of this pushback. And Sandy, is it about interest rates or is it about independence? It's both. We know that the U.S. president wants lower rates. He's called for them. He's called for the Fed chair to resign over it. The independence of the central bank is very much in question. To go after him with criminal charges, even if it's his Department of Justice, is the kind of thing you would see in a third world country, not the United States of America, and that's where markets get nervous. If the end game here is a Federal Reserve under the thumb of the U.S. president, you would bet on a strong market reaction because those rates are the bedrock, the foundation of a whole bunch of other markets. People would flee. It would be bad for the markets and bad for the economy, including, Sandy, ours, which is one reason our central bank governor may have spoken out today.
Right. Okay, Amanda, thank you so much. A terrifying moment for an Air Canada crew member who was accidentally locked inside a plane's cargo hold. In a statement to CTV News, Air Canada says the incident happened in December on a flight from Toronto to Moncton. The airline says the doors to the plane inadvertently closed with a ground crew member inside. Now, social media accounts say passengers heard yelling and banging when the plane began to taxi for takeoff. The aircraft returned to the gate and the crew member was not injured. Well, a growing number of Canadians, 4 out of 5, say that they have been scammed either online or by phone, adding to the widespread belief that crime is up across the country. But does the perception of increased criminal activity match the actual data? We asked CTV's Adrian Gobriel to dig into the stats and offer some understanding of the reality. Adrian.
Sandy, a 20-year-old student here at the University of Toronto was shot and killed just last month at one of the school's campuses in the East End of Toronto. Police believe it may have been a random act. Just one example of a violent crime that has an increasing number of Canadians feeling uneasy in their communities.
From brazen smash and grab jewelry store robberies across the Greater Toronto Area to jarring shootings linked to South Asian organized crime in Surrey, BC. Video of violent acts across the country are in part stoking fears and shaking the confidence of Canadians.
Exceedingly alarming videos of people breaking into jewelry stores with sledgehammers and liquor store grabs, etc. That fuels the fear in people. But the reality is, it's not as bad as they think.
These new numbers from Angus Reid are providing a fresh snapshot of public perceptions, with a growing number of people suggesting that crime has been increasing in their communities. Multiple major crime categories are down in some of Canada's largest cities. In Ottawa, both homicides and shootings have decreased year over year. 2025 marked the fewest homicides in Calgary in the last decade. Assaults and robberies were down in Vancouver last year when compared to 2024.
Perception versus reality are often two different things, but what's really important here is that people don't feel safe.
And what the latest data shows is that people feel they're at a higher risk of being on the receiving end of a violent crime. Those public feelings may have been formed over time, regardless of what year-end data actually shows. In 2022, auto thefts were at record highs. Home invasions linked to stolen cars led to one Toronto cop suggesting that residents leave their keys at their front door to avoid confrontations with intruders, further fanning the flames of fear.
Much of that based on very high-profile coverage of some very dynamic and exceedingly alarming videos.
Another public concern, repeat violent offenders. Last year, the federal government introduced legislation to tighten bail reforms. That bill is still making its way through Parliament. Sandy.
CTV's Adrian Gobriel.
The procedure goes against Catholic teachings.
Coming up, why an interpretation of medically assisted dying is being tested in court. That story when we return. A trial in a case involving medical assistance in dying begins today in British Columbia, and it could have ramifications right across the country. It is a Charter of Rights challenge by the family of a woman who was forced to leave a Vancouver hospital to receive MAID. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson is on this story. And Andrew, why wasn't the woman able to receive MAID in hospital?
Sandy, the Vancouver hospital is run by a Catholic organization that doesn't allow maids, so the woman endured a painful transfer and never woke up to say her planned goodbyes. Sam O'Neill knew she was going to die. There was no stopping her end-stage cervical cancer.
We miss our daughter every minute of every day.
The one thing the 34-year-old could control in April 2023, her final moments, a carefully planned ceremony surrounded by friends and family, or so she thought. O'Neill was receiving palliative care at Vancouver's St. Paul's Hospital, a faith-based institution that doesn't allow medical assistance in dying.
St. Paul's is a Catholic-run hospital, but it is also publicly funded.
In her final hours, O'Neill had to be transferred to another facility before she was sedated for the drive. Her mom says there was only time for a rushed goodbye.
And I told Sam quickly that being her mom was the first, most joyful part of my life. I love being her mom.
The family says Sam's final memory on Earth was extreme pain. She never regained consciousness before her death. O'Neill's mother is now the lead plaintiff in a constitutional challenge in BC Supreme Court. At the heart of the case, the maid exemption the BC government grants to faith-based institutions.
We believe that no one should lose access to end-of-life care based on where they happen to receive treatment.
Providence Healthcare oversees St. Paul's and says in a statement it has a long-standing moral tradition of compassionate care that neither prolongs dying nor hastens death, rooted in the belief that all life is sacred. The charter challenge may last more than a month. A decision that could have Canada-wide implications is expected by late summer or fall. Sandy.
CTV's Andrew Johnson. Still ahead, Calgary gets yet another water warning. The mayor's appeal as the city races to repair a badly damaged feeder main. A man has been arrested in connection to a massive gold heist at Toronto Pearson Airport in 2023. Police say the 43-year-old was arrested today after landing in Toronto from Dubai. 10 suspects have now been charged in connection to the high-profile heist. Authorities say 400 kilograms of gold was stolen from Air Canada's cargo facility, valued at around $20 million. That gold hasn't yet been recovered. Officials in Calgary say a damaged water main is expected to return to service in the next few days. The mayor says the timeline depends on water testing and stabilizing the pipe.
We are not out of the woods yet. As we refill this pipe and bring it back up to pressure, there's still a real chance that we could see another break.
Jeremy Farkas says the pipe that carries approximately 60% of the water for the city is, quote, terminally ill and will need to come offline again in the spring and the fall for more repairs. And members of the military arrived today at a northern Manitoba First Nation to help with a water crisis.
The water plant we have is still out of commission, and we have the Army coming to help us. They have their engineers and also the logistics people that are coming to help us out.
A 7-person team from the Canadian Armed Forces arrived this morning to help with critical infrastructure and recovery operations. A power outage lasting days left homes and other buildings with frozen water systems, sewer backups, electrical issues and burst pipes. It happened on the Pimachikamak Cree Nation, about 500 kilometers north of Winnipeg. After the break, the Canadian hitting all the right notes. My conversation with K-pop Demon Hunters director Maggie Kang when we come back. Canadians were in the spotlight at the Golden Globes last night, picking up multiple awards. The Pit, created by Canadian R. Scott Gemmell, took home multiple trophies, while Seth Rogen won Best Male Actor in a TV comedy for his work in The Studio.
Steve Martin, Martin Short especially, I remember growing up watching you guys my whole life thinking one day I'm going to beat them.
Well, The Studio also won the Golden Globe for Best TV Show, Musical or Comedy. And the smash hit film K-pop Demon Hunters had a big night, taking home 2 awards, Best Animated Feature and Best Song for Golden.
Thank you to the Golden Globes and for everyone who believed that
a movie so deeply rooted in Korean culture could resonate with a global audience.
And that is Maggie Kang, the Korean-Canadian director of the mega Netflix hit K-pop Demon Hunters, accepting one of 2 awards last night. And we are so pleased that she can join us today from Los Angeles. And congratulations, Maggie. When did you realize you had such a mega hit on your hands?
Oh, gosh. You know, I have to say, almost immediately, when I was watching the movie on Netflix, right when it dropped at midnight, I was on social media and I was just seeing content being created and uploaded by fans, and some of these were getting hundreds of thousands of likes and shares, and so it did feel like the fans found it and were kind of promoting it, and the word was spreading. So it felt like. Yeah. It happened pretty quickly, yes.
Well, you know, you've said, and you said it in your acceptance speech, that the film is deeply rooted in Korean culture. It also depicts strong and fearless women. In fact, I should tell you, my 4-year-old granddaughter has told her parents she wants to be a demon hunter when she grows up. So what inspired you to create a film around that content?
Oh, you know, I just started with Korean culture, Korean mythology, and I landed on the idea of demons for some reason, and it felt like a fun idea to kind of mash up music and the idea of the secret life of idols being demon hunters, and then from there we kind of leaned into the idea of inner demons, and it became this. You know, it's a theme that I think universally translates. So it feels like that's how people kind of have found it and found meaning through the characters and in their lives. So, yeah.
And is that all, you know, I have to mention you grew up in Toronto as a Korean immigrant. Is that all part of this? Did growing up here shape you and shape the film as a result?
Oh, definitely. I think growing up in Toronto is such a multicultural city. Everybody is just encouraged to embrace their culture and celebrate it. You know, we have so many different towns and cultures just melding together. And so I think I was able to really stay very kind of grounded and still deeply rooted in my culture, because I was living in a city that, you know, really kind of encouraged that. Yeah.
Okay, well, Maggie, enjoy the accolades every single minute of it. Thanks again. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for sharing your time with us. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. Bye for now. We'll see you Tuesday.